Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. Will Russian diplomats be grounded? The EU wants to limit their right to travel across Europe. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Hungary isolated after Slovakia resumes military aid to Ukraine. Slovakia's new nuclear reactor will use American technology. And a Chopin-filled tram travels the streets of Warsaw. The EU is debating Russian diplomats' freedom of travel within the bloc. Europeans are concerned that uncontrolled trips to other member states are helping Kremlin representatives spread war propaganda. Our EU correspondent Angela Skujins reports from Brussels.
The European Union's External Action Service has proposed clamping down on the travel of Russian diplomats, their families and consular staff within the European Union to address claims of espionage in the bloc. This is according to a leaked document seen by TVP World, which proposes national governments be given the ability to reject the travel of these individuals.
Russian diplomats and other representatives are able to use visas or residence permits issued by member states to travel outside the territories of the receiving state, where they can be involved in coordinated information manipulation and interference or other acts targeted at manipulating public opinion with regard to the functioning of democratic institutions, economic activities or services of public interest.
Now, the proposal, according to this leaked document, wants to change the rules for how these individuals travel. According to the stipulations enacted right now, they are allowed to move freely within the European Union and the Schengen zone. But the EEAS wants to change this so that any individual under diplomatic cover has to ask a national government for which they want to travel to for their consent before they arrive. With at least 24 hours notice, these capitals are allowed to reject these applications. Now, this will be included in the EU's 19th sanctions package for Russia's ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Now, the sanctions also aim to target Russian gas, energy and crypto, but this new addition steps up the diplomatic tensions, certainly between the Kremlin and Brussels. The Financial Times newspaper is reporting that all EU governments are on board, and this initiative is championed by the Czech Republic. In 2014, we saw a sabotage attack there leading to the deaths of 2 people and at least 18 Russian diplomats expelled. But this is not the end of the road for this proposal or the sanctions package, at least. It needs unanimous support from the 27 EU member states. What we're hearing from our other sources here in the Belgian capital is that there is optimism that this sanctions package will be approved this week, or if not this week, at least next week. We have heard a response from the Kremlin in which they vowed to take their own action against these diplomatic measures. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
The Polish government wants to introduce changes to the citizenship process. The push comes as a response to a presidential initiative from last week. Warsaw aims for future citizens to not only reside and pay taxes in Poland, but also to pass a citizenship test on the country's history and culture. Michiel van Blommestein covers the proposal.
If the Polish government gets its way, becoming a Polish citizen will become more difficult. Based on a proposal by the country's president Karol Nawrocki, work has started on changing the country's law on obtaining citizenship. To qualify, the typical immigrant needs to live and work in Polish for at least 3 years and have housing. While the government seems on board to add new barriers to the process, the Interior Minister indicated he is not completely in agreement with the President's proposal.
Extending the time when it comes to gaining Polish citizenship is oversimplifying the problem, which is much deeper.
One of Nawrocki's arguments is that Poland's 3-year waiting period is one of the shortest in Europe. while true on paper, the process is much longer in practice. It already takes years before immigrants qualify for permanent residence, and only from that time does the 3-year time frame for naturalization come into effect. And that is without the waiting times of up to 3 years until it's signed by the president.
I've been living here for 10 years. I work here, my daughter was born here, and I'm very much integrated. Right now, I don't have Polish citizenship, but I'm trying to get it. Right now, I will have to wait another 5 years.
The collected Polish urban municipalities estimate the number of Ukrainians in the country at a little under 3.5 million. But while annual numbers of Ukrainians applying for citizenships has risen from around 10,000 last year to 16,000 this year, only 40,000 obtained their Polish passports over the last decade.
In my surroundings, I see a growing number of people wanting to stay and looking to be naturalized.
The Polish government has indicated it will submit its proposal by the end of the month.
Our proposals will ensure the process is, on the one hand, dynamic, and on the other, that everyone gaining Polish citizenship is rooted in Poland, while also guaranteeing the safety of all citizens.
For TVP World, I'm Michiel van Blommestein.
The conflict between Ukraine's president and Hungary's prime minister escalated after Viktor Orbán accused Volodymyr Zelenskyy of trying to blackmail his country into the EU. The rift leaves Budapest increasingly isolated in Europe, especially as Slovakia resumes military aid to Ukraine. Anastasia Yanchenko covers the story.
A new week and a new spike in an already tense relationship between neighbors Hungary and Ukraine. This time, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is accusing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy of moral blackmail.
Hungary has no moral obligation to support Ukraine's EU accession. No country has ever blackmailed its way into the European Union, and it won't happen this time either.
To support his claim, Hungary's Prime Minister cited the people's opinion, delivered via a referendum, which was in practice a government survey. The result of this referendum was a whopping 95% of the voters opposed to Ukraine's EU membership. But the poll has faced criticism over its credibility and transparency.
The government sends from taxpayers' money these propaganda letters with envelopes asking a few very biased, politically biased, manipulative questions, which people can send back.
And according to Hungarian media outlet Telex, roughly 29% of those who voted in last year's European Parliament elections voted in the government survey.
We don't know how many people have responded. The government says a number, but we don't have an independent board that would actually certify it.
Accession to the EU requires unanimity among member states, which means Hungary can easily block Ukraine's bid. Orbán has also blocked the president of the European Council's recent attempt to change that rule. Last week, during an informal summit in Copenhagen, Antonio Costa tried to change voting rules from unanimity to a qualified majority. Orbán also opposed a €140 billion EU loan to Ukraine.
It basically says that his role is also to protect the European Union from this suicidal and inherently wrong track of supporting Ukraine.
While Orbán continues to distance himself from the EU with his anti-Ukrainian stance,
why should we share Ukraine's difficult fate?
His Slovak counterpart Robert Fico has shifted course. For the first time since returning to power in 2023, he has agreed for Slovakia to resume military aid to Ukraine. Miroslav Lajčák, Fico's security advisor, shared a similar sentiment with TVP World during the Warsaw Security Forum.
Slovakia wishes Ukraine to achieve a just peace and to be able to focus fully on its economic development and European integration. When we speak about the opening accession negotiations, we always refer to 26 versus 1. We never say 25 because Slovakia has been very clear on that.
A dissenting opinion comes from the likely incoming Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš. His openly anti-Ukrainian and often described as pro-Russian party ANO has just won the recent parliamentary elections, though it failed to secure a majority.
We are helping Ukraine through EU. EU is helping Ukraine, and it is within the European budget, next budget, and we are paying a lot of money to European budget, and this is the way how we will continue to help.
He is not by definition pro-Ukraine or pro-Russia. In fact, he is a pragmatist and a tough one. So what matters to him is first and foremost his personal benefit.
The growing instability surrounding Ukraine's European integration process could significantly complicate the country's long-sought goal of EU membership.
The Americans will help build the seventh and most powerful yet nuclear reactor in Slovakia. Prime Minister Robert Fico's government has signed an agreement with US company Westinghouse, which will provide the needed technology. Jakub Kapiszewski takes a closer look.
This is the nuclear power plant in Slovakia's Bohunice, where the country may soon start building its seventh reactor.
Our goal is to use the infrastructure of the Jaslovské Bohunice nuclear power plant to build another reactor fully owned by the state. Its output will be significantly higher than the existing 440 megawatt units. The reactor will exceed 1,000 megawatts.
Slovakia currently operates 5 nuclear reactors, 2 at Bohunice and 3 at Mochovce, and is building one more at the latter location. The country has one of the biggest shares of nuclear power in its electricity generation mix in the world, second only to France. But it wants to bet on nuclear even more.
We estimate that our electricity consumption could rise by 40 to 60% by 2040. To meet this demand, we will need new sources of energy. Moreover, the Slovakian Republic must compete as a country to attract data centers, and these too require huge amounts of power.
Choosing Westinghouse will help relieve some of the heat the country has been getting from Washington for sticking with Russian oil and gas purchases. In the region, Poland also tapped Westinghouse as the technology provider for its first nuclear power plant.
Polish Armaments Group, or PGZ, a state-owned defense group, aims to double production of its Piorun anti-aircraft missiles and launchers. The air defense systems have become a hit expert of Poland's defense industry, attracting international buyers and tilting the battlefield in Ukraine's favor. Maciej Wilowski looks into the details.
Poland's armaments industry is ramping up its production quotas. State-owned PGZ aims to double production of its Piorun, or Thunderbolt, anti-aircraft missiles and launchers over the next 4 years. PGZ currently produces 1,300 units annually through its subsidiary Mesco. That's more than the combined annual output of U.S. Stingers and French Mistrals. These weapons classify as a man-portable air defense system, or manpads. Soldiers carry the launchers on their shoulders, firing missiles capable of hitting enemy targets up to 6 kilometers away. Piorun missiles have proven effective on the battlefield in Ukraine, allowing Ukrainian ground units to shoot down Russian aircraft flying at lower altitudes.
Piorun manpad is one of the best right now in the context of the global market, mostly because it is a very sophisticated technology when you compare that with other systems.
Their effectiveness has made them a hit export for Poland's state defense sector, attracting international buyers.
We are prepared for increased deliveries not only to the Polish market, and we are aware of that. We are in many discussions with potential customers from third countries who would like to equip their armies with our Polish equipment.
Foreign governments such as those of Belgium, Norway, the Baltic states, and the US have ramped up purchases of Piorun missiles in recent years. Sweden is the latest, finalizing a €282 million deal last month, with deliveries expected to begin in early 2026. Piorun's battlefield success and international appeal highlights Poland's potential as a key weapons supplier for NATO allies.
Poland can play a vital role in the context of strengthening our partners in NATO, because we have this product. We are having also combat-proven technology.
With Piorun production set to double in the coming years, Poland's defense industry could prosper like never before. Maciej Wilowski for TVP World.
If you're not a fan of 19th century piano masterpieces, you should definitely avoid Warsaw's public streetcars. where unsuspecting passengers are driven around the city accompanied by live music. The initiative is part of the 19th Chopin piano competition taking place in the Polish capital. And our reporter, Filip Nowicki, took a ride, so you don't have to.
It is not a typical morning commute in Warsaw. Inside the tram, a piano, a pianist, and dozens of passengers. The city has transformed one of its trams into a moving concert hall to celebrate the 19th International Frédéric Chopin Piano Competition, one of the world's most prestigious classical music events, this year featuring 85 pianists from across the globe. Chopin's melodies fill the streets, turning an ordinary ride into something unique.
I feel like it's quite an unusual but very welcome surprise to see actual pianists playing here. Ładna muzyka gra.
Even though the tram still shakes as always, beautiful music is playing. It's a pleasant surprise that the tram stopped right at the stop where we were walking down the street.
Behind the keyboard is a young pianist who traded the concert stage for a city tram. As the Chopin competition takes over Warsaw's Philharmonic Hall, this tram brings the music straight to the people.
The tram is going through like normal districts inhabited by residents, and we're just here like a small community of Warsaw people listening to the most famous Polish pianist, Chopin.
Because sometimes beauty doesn't wait for a stage. Sometimes it just hops on the tram and plays its way through the heart of the city.
We'll join the EU whether Orbán wants it or not, versus we won't be morally blackmailed. The conflict between Ukraine and Hungary's leaders is gaining momentum as other countries of the region have managed to find a common tongue when it comes to helping Ukraine. For how long, though? And to talk about this and more, we're joined by Bogdan Nahailo, editor-in-chief of Kiev Post. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
So, first of all, is Viktor Orbán using the conflict with Volodymyr Zelenskyy to gain more support ahead of the parliamentary elections in Hungary? And if the answer is yes, why? Because it seems that it's not working anymore.
It's not working anymore, but he wants to give it a chance. It's also leverage within the EU to get more money for Hungary, to get more clout for himself. He's fairly isolated, but this is still a powerful lever that he has. And also, I think he looks at the Polish example, that the Ukrainian case has been used in politics, in domestic politics, and is still being used. And perhaps he's learning from that too.
Well, we have a very, very big Ukrainian diaspora these days in Poland, so it's quite understandable that politicians will exploit the topic. Now, on the other hand, Volodymyr Zelenskyy stated Ukraine will be in the European Union with or without Orbán because this is the choice of the people of Ukraine. Now, why is the Ukrainian president so sure about it? If even France was against, this latest proposal by Antonio Costa of changing the admission rules.
Cutting corners.
Yes.
Streamlining the process. Well, obviously, Ukraine is a big country. And if the war ends, even with Ukraine temporarily having to accept the fact that 20% or what of its territory is occupied temporarily. It's still a big country, and it's an agrarian powerhouse, as we know. It's shown itself to be, creative in the technological sense. Now, remember, go back a few decades. I mean, remember the attitude towards Poland joining from the Irish and the French and the whole issue of the common agricultural policy. People are defensive. They They seem to be altruistic on the surface, but they defend their own interests. It's quite common.
Well, every change is difficult.
Yes, every change is difficult. So, Zelenskyy has to say that. He has to promise the Ukrainian people something, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We haven't fought and suffered for so long to be told, know your place, you're going to be neutralized, you're not going to be allowed anywhere, and just be happy to be alive, So you can understand him. But on the other hand, I think he is being encouraged by quite a few of the Western leaders that your time is coming. It's coming faster than perhaps was expected. So just be patient and let's see how we can settle the war, how we can suspend the fighting for a meaningful amount of time, give you some security, and let's see how you can fit into the broader scheme of things. So I think for the longer term, he hopes that that will work and that there will be a place for Ukraine at the end of the day. And I think he's also encouraged by Russia's actions in the last months, weeks. These mysterious drones have added to the fears and complexes in Europe. And when you hear the German Chancellor, for example, after Merkel's reign, talking about Europe being at war already, under attack, not just from cyber attacks or disinformation or whatever, but, mysterious drones appearing, ships appearing offshore, mysterious, etc., etc. I think Zelenskyy is also sensing that there's a change in mindsets that is favorable for once in history, in the modern period, to the Ukrainian case, and that the Russians are helping this by basically behaving like a Tarzan in a jungle, beating their chests and saying, because of Trump's, prevarication, with the Russian aggression in many forms, that this is playing into Ukraine's hands. Zelenskyy saying, we told you so. You know who you're up against. Now do you believe us?
Right, now talking about changing a mindset, what happened in Slovakia now that they are so eager to provide military help to Ukraine?
I don't know. Behind the scenes, obviously, pressure of sorts has been applied, perhaps the sort that is being applied to Orbán too. But I think, we've seen after the Czech elections, perhaps that maybe this enthusiasm will wane and maybe the new government in Czechia will be more reluctant to provide the ammunition that it has been providing, the shells in particular for Ukraine, and perhaps that will influence Slovakia. But again, much depends on Poland, because you have a government that is very pro-Ukrainian in many ways, in most ways, and you have a president that, shall we say, less enthusiastic about helping Ukraine, which is not to say he's anti-Ukrainian, but, caters more to the populist sentiment, and as you say, rightly acknowledges the fact that Ukrainians are here in force, and they've been here for a long time now.
Mm-hmm. Before we talk about Poland and the Ukrainian diaspora, I have one more question about the Czech Republic. Now, do you think that there's such a possibility that now Czechia will take on the role of Slovakia? Because Andrej Babiš, probably soon to be the next Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, was quite clear about his views on providing military help to Ukraine during the elections.
Well, it's complicated by the fact that he has his own position, but he has to form a coalition of rightist parties to the right of him, who are even more reluctant to support Ukraine and in many ways are pro-Russian. So I think that is what we will see. But on the other hand, perhaps Slovakia, given the right carrots and inducements from the EU and support from others, might feel that their moment has come to be a little bit more autonomous in that Visegrad setup and to be heard, to have their voice heard in Europe, as opposed to be dominated by their neighbors.
Poland now. So Polish president wants to change the law and extend the minimal residence period before obtaining the Polish citizenship from 3 to 10 years, more or less, but numbers here are still quite unclear. Now, the question is, why does the presidential palace, fear this potential new group of voters?
Firstly, I think you have to take a balanced approach to it. One can understand certain concerns because in most cases, for example, when I'm not in Kiev, I live in Barcelona. It takes 5 years to get a residency, first time. Then it's renewed for 5 years, and only after 10 years can you apply for a Spanish citizenship, for instance. So in Poland, the waiting period was short until now. But you have a lot of...
Is there a citizenship test? Because that's
yes,
the governmental proposal.
You have to know the language well enough. You have to have a history test, quite long, about 2 hours in Spain, etc. But look, even in Britain, in recent weeks, they've tightened up and are asking not only long-term residents but even refugees, those with temporary protection, to show that they know the language, that they're integrating, that they're not just, relying on freebies, as it were. So you can understand that coming in Poland, but I think that what is dismaying for Ukrainians is that they feel that they're a special case because of the war, that they didn't plan to be here for 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. But many now have put down roots, and perhaps many of them are giving up with the idea of returning to Ukraine because of the enormous, sort of tasks of rebuilding, security, etc., confidence, corruption, or whatever it is. So this was a very comfortable base. Why? It's a neighboring country. The languages are mutually intelligible. The Ukrainians have had, by and large, a good reputation as workers, as hard workers, not as freeloaders. So that's been good. But,
Having said that, do you think that the Ukrainians should have their own MPs in the Polish parliament?
Not necessarily. Look, we don't want to open a can of worms because this was a question asked in the 20s and 30s of the large Ukrainian minority that was here. I think that for those Ukrainians, they shouldn't be special for Ukrainians. They should be part of the body politic. Look, during the Solidarity period, at least 2 of my friends, Ukrainians, ethnic Ukrainians, were MPs, Miroslav Shech and another professor, Mokry from Krakow. But they were part of the Solidarity movement. They didn't appear as Ukrainian MPs, shall we say, representing Ukrainian interests. So I don't think that's the case. But look, there's another angle to it, and that is that perhaps this plays into the hands of the Zelenskyy administration, which fears that many millions of Ukrainians will never return. How do we rebuild the country afterwards? What's going to be the workforce? What do we invite Pakistanis, Indians, Syrians, whoever it is? Does Ukraine want that? Or would it prefer many of its people to gradually return home, particularly the younger people? So, this whole issue is one that has got Ukrainians thinking not just about their own personal welfare, but the government too, as well as the Polish authorities, and the split being evident between the approach between the government and the presidential administration. We're still awaiting to see what the government will propose.
And we'll learn that by the end of the month. Bogdan Nahaila, the editor-in-chief of Kiev Post, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much. And thank you for watching, and stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World.